Greetings, family. Really excited today. We are live and direct, coming to you from somewhere on the continent. And I've been soaking up the sunshine and enjoying Mama Africa land. So, those of you who are watching from the continent, I welcome you, welcome you, welcome you. To those of you who are not on the continent, come on now, make your way over. It is beautiful here. Mama Africa is absolutely beautiful. Don't believe the hype. Don't allow the mainstream media to stop you from coming home. Don't let it stop you from coming home. Anyway, we've got a really great show lined up for you today. So do let everybody know that we are live and direct. We've got our brother Kahus. Oh, I've got to put my teeth back in. Kheftusa in the house. Yeah. And he's really excited about presenting to you all today. He's got a fantastic presentation lined up. I've had a little glimpse of it. Oh my gosh, I just can't wait, to hear it. He said he's going to be going in. He's going to be going in. And so, without further ado, let me bring to the platform our brother, Dr. Kheftusa.
Yes,
Rise
yes.
up, rise up. How you doing?
I'm good, sister. I'm in anticipating this presentation.
Oh, well, let me just warn the audience because you did warn me. You said to me that this is going to be the last time that you're on this platform because after tonight, I won't be inviting you back because you're going to be going in deep. You're going to be going in deep. So get ready, family. He's told us he's going in deep. So, I don't know what's going to happen. You'll have to be the judge of that, audience. Do we have
Yes,
him back
yes.
or not? Because I know that there are a couple of topics in the future that you want to be talking about us with. And that's about butt breaking, isn't it? I was
That's
saying butt
right.
breaking, but butt
Yeah.
breaking, butt breaking.
Yes,
A very serious topic for
correct.
conversation. And yeah, you want to bring that to us. So, we've got to want him back. We've got to want him back because we want to hear those topics and those presentations, see those presentations as well. So yeah, we were talking backstage, and you were saying that I make you look like you need to get some sunshine.
Yeah, you're looking black and me look funny.
Okay, yeah, the
Oh
color
my
isn't
days.
here.
That hurt, sister. That hurt. That hurt.
Oh, rising up, all of our beautiful melanated brothers and sisters out there. I know what it's like when you stay in the cold for too long, you know? I'm here, say, cool out there. Oh, it's there right now. It cool?
Yeah, it's cold, sis. Let's not,
Cool
you
like
know
a
what?
what?
Let's not even talk about the weather, yeah? Be kind.
Okay, we won't discuss the weather. Oh wow. Okay, family, as you come through the door, please send me a welcome message. Let me know where in the world you are watching us from. I would love to greet you. We've got Zachary in the house watching from Chi Town in Illinois, saying be first, black first, first frequency. I be one black at you, Zachary, every time. We've got Sister Afri Jamo in the house, all the way from Ghana. Rise up, Sister Afri Jamo. As always, an absolute pleasure having you in the house. I think, Sister Afri Jamo, you must be one of our most loyal viewers. We appreciate love you so much. Brian's in the house as well, saying greetings, Sister Shanice and Brother Ankh. Rise up. Another familiar name that I recognize. Always a pleasure to have you in the house as well, Brian, Zachary, each and every one of you. So our family's just coming through the door. So Dr. Kheftusa and Kiba, and I'm going over to you for you to greet our beautiful audience.
Okay. Welcome. You found yourself in a peaceful place, and we wish for you blessings without number. So, tonight I'm going to be doing a presentation on male female relationships, and it's going to be a quite sensitive presentation. There may be some triggers in there in terms of some of the words that I'm going to use, but what I want us to do is to dig deep and look into this issue. It's probably not going to be what you expect, but the important thing for us to remember is that although we may describe ourselves as Afrocentric or whatever term we use, we have to remember that we cannot get caught in this Afrocentric bubble to the point where we don't understand the type of issues that our young people are facing. And that is really what this presentation wants to look at. It wants to look at some of the key issues that face our young people, because often as parents we may not truly understand the world in which our young people exist. And if you're not able to speak to them and decode what's going on, then you're in danger of losing them. So this is especially for us as parents to begin to understand some of those issues. The first part of the lecture will more or less be standard, I should say, but we'll see. We'll see what you think about it. It's a it's a before and it's a after. So we'll see what you think about it after.
All right, it sounds like we're in for a really interesting presentation. And of course, family, we welcome your comments, we welcome your suggestions, and we welcome your questions that you may have to ask our guests. You can put your questions and your comments in the chat, okay? And I will keep an eye on the chat and watch the conversation that's going on there. And when I get the cue from Dr. Kheftusa, I will bring in some of your comments. Okay, so looking forward to a really interesting conversation, Dr. Kheftusa. And can I just also, before we actually start today, just to remind those of you who tuned in last Wednesday to the presentation delivered by our King Joshua Maponga, you would have captured his vision for that wonderful royal school and that royal educational center. And those of you who want to buy a brick, those of you who want to sow a seed into that vision, those of you who would like to assist King Maponga to actually impart some power into the hearts and minds of the next generation of leaders, you can actually buy a brick in towards the building of that vision. Okay, you can send it to my PayPal account at Trip with Sister Shanice. I think it is. It's PayPal. Here it comes up on the bottom of the screen. Trip with Sister Shanice, and it will go over to our brother Joshua Maponga. A couple of you did actually send over a donation last strong. Thank you so much for that. More of you in the chat said that you were going to. Please do so. We want to make sure that this building is built during our lifetime. And if you'd like to have your name on that wall when it goes up, because we've got enough bricks to start building, then make sure that you put in the reference, the Royal Palace. So once you've gone to the PayPal, you've done made a payment to at Trip with Sister Shanice, put in the reference Royal Palace, and that will go to our brother King Maponga. And the great news is that our brother's got a heart for young people, and he's going to be coming with an initiative very soon that I'm excited to hear about, and you're going to be excited to hear about it too. So looking forward to that. So thanks in advance for the support, family. Let's do what we can. If each of us do a little, it will amount to a lot. Okay, let's see. The family's coming in the house, Dr. Kheftusa. Yeah, we've got Seeing Charles in the house. We've got Kamani in the house. Seeing Charles is watching us from Baltimore in the USA. Woo woo! Awesome. We've got Brian. He doesn't say where he's viewing us from, but it's all good. Kimani's rising you up as well, Brother Kheftusa. And yeah, he's rising up the family in the house. Anna is in the house. So yeah, we welcome you as you come in. Okay, without further ado, Dr. Kheftusa Ankhiba, I'm just going to introduce you and then I'm going to hand over to you for the presentation today. Some of you may be already familiar with our brother Dr. Kheftusa Ankhiba and Sir or to app, because he is not, I know I've got it wrong, you can correct me, sorry. Okay, well, go ahead, say your name, your full name
So
for me.
it's Dr. Kheftusa Akhiba Ankh Sir Uwat Eb.
Boy, I really messed up on that one. I'm so sorry. I'm not even
Yeah,
gonna try and repeat that now. But we're family now. He's not a stranger to this platform. Some of you who have heard, watched, seen one of his presentations before will know that you are in for a serious ride today. And the topic is black male female relationships. It's a part 2. He is back by popular demand. And those of you who watched part 1, you'll know what I'm talking about. So, our brother is a historian, Pan Africanist, cultural scientist, and he has an astute and profound analysis of the myriad of issues that are affecting us globally as an African community. He's been lecturing for over 20 years. I know you don't think he looks old enough, but that's what he tells me. He's been lecturing for over 20 years and has been
that's true.
influenced by some of our greats. He's been influenced by the greats such as Yusuf Ben Jockerman, Dr. John Henry Clark, and Dr. Melena Karenge, Dr. Amos Wilson, Professor James Small, Ra'un Nefer, Amen, Dr. Kheftusa. Wow, wow, wow. You are unique in your own style. We know that. We've seen some of your presentations, a very holistic approach to the issues that are impacting on us as a people mentally and spiritually. And we're
Yes.
looking forward to the message that you're going to be conveying to us today. Your messages always come across in a very comprehensive way. So the lecture is going to be off the hook, family. It's also going to incorporate us as a people from our ancient great civilizational times through to today. So we're going to go back to go forward. This is what I love about your presentations.
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am.
Kheftusa, Akhiba,
Um,
take it away.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so we need to get this presentation up. All right, beautiful. Okay, so I'm not gonna hang around because I wanna get in now. So the first thing I want to say is that we need to know who we are. Most of us on this platform understand or have some kind of understanding of our greatness. But the key thing here is that we often talk about male female relationships without going into the proper context. Now, for Africans, the central goal of male female relationships within the indigenous African system was the creation and production of the family. Given that for traditional African cultures, male female relationships represent the building blocks of the family, which can be traced all the way back to the trinity of Osor, Orset, and Heru. So the key thing is that for Africans, talking about male-female relationships, a relationship between a man and a woman, is not really the thing. It's the family that is at the core. So the reason why male-female relationships are important is because they help to create family. That is the central point. Now, ancient African culture, because we know that Africa was the light of the world. Ancient African culture recognized the sacred duality of life, that masculine and feminine principle, because we should know that within the man is a feminine aspect, within the woman is a masculine aspect. So within each of us, there is a masculine and feminine part. So in truth, we have a way of connecting in a very special way. So for our ancient people, this concept of Shu and Tefnut, in the Chinese system, they would call it yin and yang. The importance of this concept of Shu and Tefnut, which represents Shu representing the masculine, Tefnut representing the feminine, the key thing is to merge. So the key thing in relationships between a man and a woman are to merge into each other, to become one, to unify into a whole. Because in truth, without each other, we are only half. So a whole represents the man and the woman coming together in a harmonious manner. So oftentimes today, you find that we get into this: God was a woman, God is a man. Well, actually, in the highest conceptualization of African culture, God is neither male nor female, but that's another lecture. But often you find people saying God is a man, God is a woman, and going at each other because we don't understand the reality of who we are. So the goal was to harmonize the male and female energies to create man and woman as the foundation stone of a just society. And as Obotashaka says here, rather than calling ancient traditional systems matrilineal and patrilineal or matriarchy or patriarchal, we should understand the goal was to create a twin lineal system, meaning to empower both the masculine and the feminine side so that we could create family. So in the African family systems, the husband and the wife were co-rulers, with each playing a complementary role in shaping the family. That's from Obotashaka. So an important thing to understand then is that we're not supposed to be oppositional. We are supposed to understand the role, that role that actually exists in nature. So let's look at this sister, Frances Quest Wilson, a beautiful African woman, a wonderful scholar. Now, one of the things that she said, taken from the ISIS papers, the most profound aggressions have been directed towards Black people who have the greatest color potential and therefore are the most envied and feared in genetic color competition. So, in other words, we know that this thing that we call melanin, this pigmentation, has been a key factor in history in terms of how other people have related to Africans. But it's not just the melanin, it's because in Africa, especially in the Happy Valley, we found that good earth. We created a society based on the riches that we had. And Dr. Clark has said that Africans have always had things that other people wanted, but they did not want to pay for. So it's important to understand that Blackness itself has been attacked, but also because of the material riches of we, the original people, we have been under siege for a very long time. So you're saying, well, what has this got to do with male-female relationships? The important thing to remember, and I'm not going into detail here because I have a lot to go through. The important thing to remember is that in the Happy Valley context, and generally over Africa, African women have been queen mothers and female rulers and co-rulers, especially within the context of Kemet and Kush, that Happy Valley system. So the idea that African women have not ruled is foreign to Africans. The idea that the woman is not a sacred vessel is foreign to Africans. But it's important to remember that that twin lineal system requires that both the man and the woman create a sacred union. And of course, we know today that it is easier said than it is done. Let's look at why. So, one of the things that we need to understand is the warfare and cultural assimilation has impacted in what I will call the rise of this male and female disunion. So, in other words, when you go back into our ancient history that I talked about, we didn't have that type of disunion. But there has been a transformation of the African worldview pertaining to gender. But this transformation did not originate in indigenous African culture, according to Sheikh Anta Diop. He says, we cannot emphasize too much the role played in this transformation by outside factors. So, in other words, outside factors impinged on African indigenous culture. How so? And one of those factors, or one of the key factors, was through religion. And he points to Islam and Christianity, and then he talks about the secular presence of Europe in Africa. So in other words, from ancient to modern times, our worldview has been greatly impacted by external factors, i.e. warfare, cultural assimilation, have helped to create a disunion between African men and African women that is existent until this very day. Okay, so a lesson in history. Let's look at this. We need to find an example to look at. So, Manchuria, a Christian kingdom. The kingdom of Manchuria was created by Nubians in the 6th century after they converted to Christianity. So we should know historically that after the fall of ancient Kemet, Justinian, a Roman emperor, shut down the last of our temples. And then from that, we then created this Coptic church. And Christianity, therefore, if you study the work of Dr. Ben, comes out of the African system. In fact, Dr. Ben says Christianity, Islam, and Judaism are all interrelated to these African systems. Now, basically, Manchuria was part of 3 kingdoms that existed in North Africa. If you check the map, you can see. Now, why is this important? So it was situated between Aswan in southern Egypt and Khartoum in central Sudan. It existed between 500 AD to the middle of the 14th century, and its capital was Dongola. Now there's a little thing there. If you want to read up a little bit about it, then you can. That's just a link. So we're looking at these Nubians who have now become Christians. They're not Kemites anymore. They're not following the indigenous program or systems of their ancestors. They now have this new religion called Christianity. It's important. So, in 1652, there was a treaty that was made between the Arabs who had conquered Egypt and the Nubians. Now, it's important to understand that if you read properly and understand history, you will understand that Arabia was originally peopled by black people. That is not the subject, but keep that in mind. So the Mercurians agreed to a treaty with the Arabs who had conquered Egypt. Now, according to Wallace Budge, this treaty involved an annual tribute. What was that tribute? It consisted of 365 slaves, so-called slaves. The Baht was paid regularly by the Nubians for a period of 600 years. So for 600 years, a minimum of 365 so-called slaves were sent to these Egyptians, so-called Egyptians. So in each year, they sent in addition to these slaves as a present I want you to think about that. So each year you send 365 so-called enslaved people. What do you get back? You get wheat, barley, wine, horses, and stuffs. That's according to Budge. Now, it gets worse. Dr. Clark highlights the following. This is what was stipulated from the so-called Egyptians, not the Kemites, the Egyptians, or the people who had conquered Egypt. Among them is to be no decrepit old man or woman or any child who has not reached puberty. You are to deliver them. Can you imagine this? 365 of our people delivered in yearly tribute for 600 years. Now, the question I want you to keep in your mind, how did this decision impact the African world? Was there a karmic backlash to this? See, I know that some people are going to read this history and they're going to say, well, they had no choice. They had no choice because either they would have been conquered or they gave up the 365. But actually, it was more than 365 because they were encouraged to send an additional 40. But the point I want you to understand that what happened during that period of history was essentially human trafficking. Human trafficking and the sexualization of African women, African men, and African boys. Understand, people. Now, today, we talk about sex trafficking. If you study the United States, you will find that there are large numbers of African women or African American women who go missing every year. See, you think that this trafficking has just began, but I'm trying to show you that this abuse that we have been suffering has been going on for centuries. But because we fail to study our history, we don't know it. But remember, here's the thing. We are the returning ancestors. So what happened before is within us, whether we acknowledge it or not. So that's the first part I wanted to get your mind around. Because when we study history as African people, we should not sensationalize. We must study history for both the good and the bad in terms of our weaknesses. We got to understand what we have done so that we can prevent such things from happening again. So now I'm going to go on to section 2. Let's look at the brain. What does the brain have to do with relationships? So my theory then is that your brain inhibits your relationships. Western culture, which includes enslavement and the imposition of racial oppression, has induced racialized trauma that has damaged the mental health and psychological function of the global African community. In other words, Malcolm told you, you say you've left nothing in Africa. He said you left your mind in Africa. When we are watching the murder of Tyree Nichols or the murder of George Floyd or the constant stream of videos of murder, sufferation of African people, it damages our brain. It re-traumatizes us. When we continuously watch slave movies, I don't watch them anymore. Unless you make a movie on the Haitian Revolution, I'm not watching it. Because every time you see the oppression inflicted on African men and women on the slave plantation, there's a part of you that relives that. And so after a while, it doesn't become history. It becomes a psychological weapon that is used to traumatize you. That is one of the reasons why today there is a almost palpable anger within the African community, and we got to watch this thing called anger, but I'm going to deal with that later. So according to Ra'u Nefer Amen, who wrote a book, Wa'eb, everything that man does from a physical perspective is determined by her or his brains, its state of health, and its level of development. Now, most people think there's one brain. There's actually 4 brains. Okay, 4 brains. But let's dig deeper. Let's look. My take on this is, the point is your ability to function correctly in male-female relationships is predicated on your brain health and what portion of the brain you are functioning from. Think about it, people. You know, maybe you thought this was going to be a love discussion, some love surgery. We don't do Valentine's Day anyway. But the point is, we got to understand, what do we say? You need a knowledge of self or self-knowledge. A knowledge of self means you got to understand all of the things that impact you on a daily basis. So I'm saying the health of your brain directly impacts your ability to function in any situation, including male-female relationships. So ultimately then, many of us have damaged our brains and hence our ability to function in male-female relationships, and all areas of life have been compromised. Because most times we don't even think about brain health. You know, your brain sits in water, and you know, I drink the water. You know, I drink the water. You have to understand that you got to nourish the brain. But let's continue. Okay. So let's look at the four brains. And the last bit I looked at from Ryan F. Amen, but these are some basic things, very basic. The four brains: the reptilian brain, which is the oldest brain, the brain stem, the medulla, and the cerebrum, responsible for your instincts. That your instincts, your reaction. You know, some people say, "Oh, I always follow my gut reaction." Your guts might be telling you the wrong thing to do. You can't just follow gut reactions or instincts. It's dependent on other factors. But the reptilian brain, which is the oldest part of the brain, which means that it actually has a major impact because we're not really aware of it and how it works. Then we've got the mammalian brain. Now, remember, in the womb of the mother, the fetus goes through these different stages, but that's another discussion, yeah? The mammalian brain, the limbic system, responsible for your emotions and feelings. I feel like I like her. I feel like I dislike him. I feel. You know, sometimes you're feeling wrong enough. You're feeling, but where do your feelings come from, and how are those feelings related or in alignment to the truth? Feelings, people. Then there's the neocortex, the seat of your logical and abstract thinking, thoughts, cognition, language, sense perception, and spatial reasoning. So you've got the reptile, the mammal, and then the so-called human brain. All three of them are problematic, even at their best. And then, as Ryan F. Amen has told us, the frontal lobe, it houses the ability to rise above the automatic and sensual reactions. So in other words, the frontal lobe transcends those other brains. It's where your empathy comes from. It's where your deep thinking and philosophical thinking and almost a thinking without thinking, but I'm not going to explain that one, yeah? But the thing is, the frontal lobe allows you to understand more complex ideas and also the causes and consequences of your actions. So the reptilian brain don't go into consequences. It doesn't look at. So, for example, supposing somebody steps on my foot, my reptilian brain might say, "Thump them down." Doesn't think about causes, or consequences. Doesn't necessarily think about, was that the right thing to do? It acts. It's action based. Yeah. So I'm not going to go fully into that, but what I want you to understand is that you need to know what part of your brain or brains do you regularly function out of, because guess what, people, that's going to impact your ability to understand your partner, to listen to your partner, to be in tune and in line with your partner. You're not going to get that from the lower brains. So you got to understand, a knowledge of self and self-knowledge is key. Now, note, the brain does not mature until your 28th year. Do you hear that? The brain don't mature till you're 28. But guess what? It only matures if you're living a proper life. Meaning you could be 50 and your brain is not matured. I'm asking you to ask yourself this question. In relationships, are you a man, a boy, a woman, a girl? We'll get to it. So the point that I'm making is that the maturity only occurs if you have not damaged your brain and you have gone through particular initiations and which allow you to understand who you are, because most of us don't know who we are. So your brain may have been damaged by the following. Stress damages your brain. Stress, when you get stressed out, damages you. Alcohol, I just lost half of you. They said, don't bring it back on, Sister Shanice. Alcohol damages your brain. Tobacco damages your brain. A poor and incorrect diet damages your brain. Lack of sleep damages your brain. Boy, I know I had brain damage because when I was young, I used to be in the blues. And if I didn't leave till 6, I said, yeah, that thing rubbish, man. Staying up late at night allows toxins to build up into your system. Recreational drugs all damage your brain. I didn't ask you what you think or what you feel about it. Scientific evidence shows this. So you take it or you leave it alone. So in other words, our first problem then is that we're all probably suffering from brain damage due to not knowing or understanding. When I say brain damage, what I'm talking about is your cognition, your ability to understand situations and respond accordingly, not to be reactionary. So, for example, the reptilian brain deals with survival mode. Okay, let's look at it. Survival brain characteristics: fight, flight, or freeze. Yeah, something happens, you fight, you run, or you freeze. You know, when I was young, sometimes we used to get into physical altercations with other people, and some man would fight, some man would run, some man would freeze. And their reputation was developed according to which one they did. I'm playing, but let's look at it. Focused on the small picture, can't see the big picture. So when your reptilian brain is working in a or has a major impact on your thinking, you can't see the big picture. Resistant to change. I am. Let me find one that you won't. Okay, we're supposed to be conscious. So I'm a Christian. Somebody comes up with information that tells me that Christianity started in Africa. Dr. Ben, you hear his lecture, but the reptilian brain said, no, I have to hold on to this thing here, sir. Me not change. Retreat to the familiar. Have you ever noticed how you may have a habit, yeah? And you're doing good, you it's a bad habit. It's a bad habit. You get rid of that bad habit, but then something stressful happens, or what you perceive to be stressful. And all of a sudden, you go back to the familiar. You have a man, you know, like the man. You say him no good, you left him now. Something happens, you run back, resisting, retreating to the familiar. Let's look at this. Governs fear and anger. Yes, we think anger is a good thing. Let me tell you something. There's nothing that you do in anger that cannot be done better when you're calm, strategic, and thinking and breathing correctly. Anger is not your friend. I'll tell you why. You say, well, when I get angry, it makes me stronger, mate. It makes me stronger. I can really, yeah, but you know what? It's damaging your system. That's why many black men die of strokes, because they're angry, they're frustrated. It gives energy, the reptilian brain, so it gives energy to you, or it drains energy. Can shut down the rest of the brain. Did you hear that? So you can get so emotional that it shuts down the rest of your brain. Now imagine if you're functioning from the reptilian and mammalian brain, which I haven't gone into, in your relationships, what them gonna look like. We're not talking about higher level thinking here. Okay? So we got to understand that racism, what we call racism, has placed us in survival mode. Relationship drama, brethren. You done know this already, yeah? Remember in the 90s, the baby mother, baby father syndrome? Oh boy, what a thing. You see, what you have to understand that we get programmed. People come out with concepts and they begin to program that concept into people. So all of a sudden, this thing, these dramas, if you're a Caribbean person, you might have seen drama in your house, but you never really saw your parents outside in drama. You didn't see them outside in drama. It might have been in your house, but not outside, because we were told, don't bring drama out on the street. But let's have a look at this relationship drama. Your inability to listen to your partner, trust them. Your inability to reason correctly. Here you are in a situation, but you can't think around that situation. Your lack of empathy. Your partner comes and tells you something, you're not bothered. You can't empathize. You can't see that the structural impact of racism on African men is different from the structural impact on African women. We got to have empathy for each other. Your inability to compromise. What is that? Compromise? And me right, Tobon. Goat-like behavior. That's why they call it goat, because it's an animal. A mammal, mammals, animals, goat-like. Not reasoning. Your inability to plan may be a result of your previous lifestyle, your anger, your hostility, and your verbal violence. See, often we talk about violence in the Black community. We don't really talk about verbal violence. If your mother or your father were constantly shouting at you or calling you names, that is a form of violence that has a major impact on your psyche. That is why on the slave plantation, they called us all kind of names. The violence was not merely physical, it was verbal, even psychological. In Caribbean households, sometimes the child will be told to go and get the belt that they're going to get hit with. Why? It's a psychology. When the child's going for the belt, like, boy, man, if I could get the belt, they want to take their time. They've got all little kind of tricks. This is funny, but it ain't even funny, because it's the psychology of the slave plantation showing itself in our family. We have all been damaged, people, whether you're an African American, whether you're African Caribbean, whether you're an African on the continent, you've all been damaged. And we all are having problems in our relationships relative to our assimilation of European or non-African cultures. So we've got relationship trauma. The best kept secret pertaining to African people and our interpersonal relationships is our failure to deal with our relationship trauma. You see, young people talk about people's body count. They say, what's your body count? That's how them talking. What's your body count? But what you have to realize is that the greater amount of relationships that you have is the greater the chance that you have been damaged by those relationships. Gonna understand trauma. When you're relating to this man or woman, are you relating to them, or are you relating to a previous experience that you had? When they say something to you, you're moved by it because you've got what's called a memory engram, something that happened before, and they say or do something, and boom, you go right back to that time. Usually a negative experience. Of course, it can work positively. You could go to the beach or hang out, have a beautiful day, and every time you think of that, that's a positive. Woo! Yeah. But we're going to look at both. Our ability to successfully engage with each other has been harmed by centuries of abuse. So I gave you Mercuria, right? In North Africa. Centuries. I didn't say 1492 people. I said centuries. Harmed by centuries of abuse and oppression stemming from conquest, colonialism, and enslavement that has its roots in ancient times and really began in North Africa. In other words, what I'm saying is submerged in our consciousness are the hurts and the pains that our ancestors went through. Science tracks what we call trauma through different generations. Okay? So just as within your genetic memory is the memory of these great civilizations, but also in that genetic memory is the memory of enslavement, oppression, genocide, ethnocide, all which have happened. So let's turn to post-traumatic slave syndrome. Post-traumatic slave disorder. Listen to this. Significant life-threatening experiences alter genetic coding, and this is inherited. So you inherit it, or it's inherited or passed down to subsequent generations. So I heard Dr. Clark say, everything that has happened in history continues to happen until you stop it. Meaning, we're still suffering from what happened in North Africa. We're still suffering from what happened in those so-called slave ships. We're still suffering from the beatings that we saw in terms of the civil rights struggle. We're still suffering in terms of what happened to Emmett Till. We're still suffering, or many of us are still suffering, because we don't have the current tools to stem that suffering. Because we can't avoid the history, but we got to learn how to deal with it. And you don't deal with it just by hearing a lecture. You need a holistic tool bag to deal with these issues. So, post-traumatic slave syndrome is a condition that exists when a population has experienced multi-generational trauma resulting from centuries of slavery and continues to experience oppression and institutionalized racism today. So the point is, people, we are still traumatized. If you think that you're going into a relationship as the perfect person who has no hang-ups and no problems, you're lying to yourself. As Malcolm would say, you're deaf, dumb, and blind. Meaning you have not acknowledged what happened to you, but you say, well, if I don't acknowledge it, it doesn't exist. I said everything that happened to you in your life is or exists within your memory banks, whether you can recall it or not. In fact, those things that you can't recall can have a major impact on your conscious behavior because they're lodged in your subconscious. Oh yeah, we're talking about relationships, people. You thought I was going to talk about chocolate, but no. No chocolate here, people. So epigenetics and culture, it is dealing with trauma and adaptation. You see, when you are traumatized, you adapt to it, you normalize it. You see, right now we can see dead African bodies all over the world, but it's normalized. It's normalized in our head and in the minds of other people. That's why when other people see us dying, it doesn't really surprise them because they've been seeing it for centuries. But we have normalized it. We've normalized it because we're used to it. That's why when black people, I'm sorry to say this, when black people attack and injure and murder each other, we don't really march about that. We do it when it's someone from another community. Make that make sense, people. All right, but that's not really my subject matter. So the making of a new people. Epigenetics is the study of how your behaviors and environment can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. In other words, if you live in what's called a ghetto, an area that is sectioned off, that has particular experiences, then your experiences are going to be different from somebody who lives in the suburbs. You ain't got no trees where you live. You haven't got nature. These things affect the way you think and how you act. Unlike genetic changes, epigenetic changes are reversible and do not change your DNA sequence. In other words, we can change them. In the 1960s, what did we do? In the 1960s and 70s, we began to change. We made changes in regard to who we were. Afros, African history, African culture. We made all these changes. And then they brought in black exploitation movies. And we went from dashiki, Afro wearing, Malcolm loving, to the N-words and pimps. They introduced that to us. In the late 1960s, the Black Power movement came under attack through drugs, that's chemical warfare, and sexual warfare. But I'll leave that alone. I'll leave that alone because Sister Denise told me to. So the point is, we have a survival modality. When our survival is threatened, we retreat to the lower levels of consciousness. That is, our enslavement placed many of our forebears into the survival mode. So imagine I'm on a slave plantation, right? I want to go to war and fight for freedom. But this person over here says, if he does that, we're all going to die, because you've seen what happens. So instead of you supporting me, your survival mode says, let's tell on the brother. Let's tell on that sister. That way I'll survive. So survival mode is exactly what it said. Survival. Remember the reptilian brain? Small picture. Fear and anxiety. Uh-oh. By placing people in this state, it encourages the selfishness of survival and reduces the ability to work collectively. So many of us, we growing up say, you know what, if we commit crimes, that don't harm the rest of our community, but it does. The very condition that we're in now comes from the imposition of economic barrenness, a desert of economics for the black man and the black woman, but especially black men. So many people then say we need to turn to crime, or we used to say we're going to liberate this. So the idea was you take it from other communities, but eventually you start taking it from each other. I'm not telling a lie, you know. The legacy of trauma is reflected in many of our behaviors. They may have been necessary for survival, but today they undermine our ability to succeed. For example, you're on a slave plantation. Here's a mother. Here's her daughter. The slave master says, if you teach that child an African language, then you're going to get hurt. The woman knows that if she shows that child too much affection, it increases the chance that the slave master or overseer is going to try to brutalize them. In other words, when we showed love and affection, we were punished. So the mother might say to the child, move your little picnic them. Now, the mum's doing it. She's playing a Nancy. But you don't know that her daughter, seeing what the mother has done, because the mind at a very young age deals with programming, begins to do what her mother did, but the mum never gave an explanation of why she did it. That was survival mode. So now that becomes part of your behavior system, because nobody has explained to you, I was only doing that to make sure you wouldn't get sold away. So many of our behaviors, people, are a Nancy. They are, in other words, we were fooling people on the plantation, but because we never had the explanation, we continue those behaviors. Let's not even go into diet on that one, yeah? Because then I really will be disliked. So we've got to look at this thing, psychic warfare, inter-community violence. You've got to understand something. In this country, there was a point where we were constantly being attacked by people in the majority culture. So we learned to fight back. we started to, as we used to say in my day, firm up. So you're not rolling on us. Now, what happens is, and you can see the same thing in the United States, what happens is black people started gangs to defend the black community. They took on an attitude that was designed to protect the community. But when that had finished and there was no longer the attack in that mass way, then you then turn on each other. When you develop a strategy of defense, but the circumstances change, do you then recognize that change, or do you continue the same behavior within your own community? Psychic warfare, inter-community violence. So, black, Negro, and I said black. I don't consider myself to be black in that way, but I'm saying black for a reason. Black, Negro coping strategies. What is in the deep recesses of the mind of the Negro? If only I could escape from my race. So in other words, they begin to see their personal security as being equal to their proximity to us. In other words, if I'm around black people, I'm not safe. Have you ever been in a job, yeah, and another black person gets a job and you're like, oh yeah, two of us now. But the other person has got the proximity thing going on. If I talk to you, then white people and other people ain't going to like me. So now I got to ignore you so I can get through, because two blacks working together frighten everybody. So your proximity and diminished identification with your blackness becomes what you think is a safety valve. That is a Negro coping strategy. I'm running from my blackness. And the key thing is that when you talk to somebody like that, you can't reason with them because they believe in their own logic. They believe in what is illogical and irrational. Why? Because they have brain damage. Me tell you already. The brain has been damaged by racism and trauma. The first time that I knew I was black, I was walking with my mum in a supermarket when I was about 7, and some white boy pointed and shouted, "He's black." I was like, what? I didn't understand, because everybody in my house looked like me. So no one was saying we're black. Now, because nobody said that, and because that incident was never a discussion point between me and my mother, it became a scar. Because even though I didn't really know what it was, I understood that him pointing at me and pointing me out meant that there was something different about me. But I wasn't celebrating it, because what am I celebrating? Oh, my people. Oh, my people. My people perish because what? A lack of knowledge. Self-hatred, self-defeat, racism, and historical trauma, people. Racism, I used to say, racism is a mental health issue. 1, for us, and 2, for Caucasians. It's a mental health issue. Racism creates mental health issues in African people, which often leads to internalized self-hate that impacts our relationships. Now, the manifestations are numerous, but the idea here is that your blackness becomes associated with something negative. He introduced blackness to me as a negative. But seeing as I wasn't being taught my history and my culture, I didn't have a defense mechanism. See? So your blackness and your very physiology, your lips, your nose. Remember when we were young and we would be among each other and people would start talking about him have big lips, look upon him nose, and all that foolishness. Psychological warfare. Psychological warfare, people. Yeah, it sounds funny, but it's real for the young people then. So it becomes your physiology, your blackness becomes a source of anxiety, fear, you will struggle when it comes to loving each other. If somebody is imposing this image of blackness as a negative, then when you look at somebody who is black, there may be elements of revulsion. Now, the degree of this, some of you said, well, I never was like that. Most people have a degree of it somewhere. And that's what you got to understand. There's a degree of it, a degree of it within us. So you have a problem loving a black woman or a black man. Why? Because it's a risk. I'm risking my life and my sanity. Many times you hear in America or over here, people say, have you given your children the talk? The talk is about race, the police, and all of the brutal scenarios that may happen. Now, if you're feeding that to somebody, is that a celebration of blackness? Or are you invoking fear? I didn't say you shouldn't have it, but how are you doing it? And what is the impact on that person? Does that make that person want to be black? You telling them that their life is in danger because you have to? Does that make them want to be black? So the subconscious mind might equate escaping from our blackness as a safety mechanism. Escaping from other black people then might save my life. Because people, this is what people think, they say, if there's too many black people in one area, it's dangerous. I'm going to move to the suburbs because then I won't be seen as the rest of them. I'm safer. Now, there's a whole piece on that in Sheikh Anta Diop, Civilizational Barbarism. Won't go into it. But what I'm trying to show you is that this racialized, distorted logic works on us and impacts our relationships. Warped relationship strategies. Now, this picture here, old Zip Coon, when I was a child. Now, remember, I'm coming from the Caribbean context. I don't know about old Zip Coon. I was in a music lesson in a white class. And in that lesson, we were singing about old Zip Coon. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it meant something. Did I go home and tell my parents? No. Did I speak about it? No. But I knew there was something. Now, in that music class, the teacher kept saying Negro, the word Negro. So in the class, I said to him, I put my hand up and said, I'm not a Negro. He said, yes, you are. I had no defense. So what happened was the next class, we went to the deputy head and I was upset. And one of my classmates said, oh, he's upset because the music teacher called him a Negro. The deputy head went and got a dictionary, went in the dictionary, said, read it out and said, you are a Negro. And my little 10-year-old, 11 self burst into tears. I never told my parents that because I knew at that stage I was not a Negro, but I had no answer. Think about it, people. Denying or altering your blackness is a strategy. The flesh connection, relating via superficial physical and psychological connections, but don't love. In other words, you relate to a black person physically, it's superficial, but don't love them because that's dangerous. Because now, if I love you and your blackness is the means by which you experience pain, by loving someone that's black, I'm going to experience more pain. Avoid creating black families because black families are likely to be destroyed. Now, some of you, go back to the slave plantation. They never let you have families. People think this. If your child can be sold away from you, that's not a family. That's not a family. So the message that was given to the subconscious is if black families are going to be under attack, since blackness is the core problem, avoid having relationships with dark people. Oh, Ooh. Don't have relationships with dark. I want a light baby. I want a baby that doesn't experience what I experienced because black people called me names. And that's what we do. We start blaming each other. Well, you're black, you called me names. Where did we get it from? Where did we get it from? I don't want to have children. Why? Because this will protect my offspring that I'm not going to have. In other words, not having children protects my offspring because I ain't have them. Oh, brothers and sisters, yeah, I told you. I didn't say all of this exists in all of us, but I've heard some of these statements. That's why I can say it. I've heard variants of these statements. If I was you now, I wouldn't have a child. It's too dangerous. You see, I'm not even going to hit that part. Let me save that. The distorted discourse. I don't trust black men. I don't trust black women. All up on the social media and internet. Constant fighting, constant name calling. Oh, even conscious people, reams of discussions of why the black man's no good or why the black woman's no good. You claim to be conscious and that's what you're doing. I have to say that oftentimes I get messages, go ahead, king this, king that, because that's what I'm projecting. And those sisters are realizing that to help the brothers, we give them a good word. To help the sisters, we give them a good word. I've heard people say, I can't stand it when people use this king or queen. What, we're supposed to call each other the N word and the B word? No, we're going to use that. We are going to use that over some of the other stuff we hear. Most of my pain came from black people. Other races will treat you better than a black man or black woman. I have had discussions with older black people who told me about things that happened to them within their family and how they claim other groups were the first ones who showed them love. But you got to remember that the kind of love that your mother or father may have showed you, it may have been distorted or not. But many times they put that roof over your head. They protected you in the best way they understood. But you say, well, they never hugged me. Maybe you don't remember when they hugged you because we're more focused on the negative, the beatings that came. I used to love black people, but they hurt me. Imagine you're knowing your history, right? And you make a statement that says, I used to love black people, but they hurt you. You, an African in the Caribbean, you, an African in America, saying black people hurt you. The reason why you're in America, because you got kidnapped and brought there. Who hurt you? Who taught you? So the variations are numerous. But what we're looking at is the destabilization of the African psyche. That is why people fight not to be called African. And even in among the conscious people, they try to find ways to say, well, we're not really African. We're this now. We're this. Because still, even in that wounded psyche, the desire to not be African is that strong. So here's the point I want to make to us. Racism uses rage to produce irrational behavior. See, look, some of you will say, I'm righteously angry. I get it. I'm angry at all the beatings that I've seen. I'm angry. I'm angry at the police brutality. I'm angry about black men not getting a job. I'm angry. But I'm warning you, when you have that anger, when you go home, who sees that anger? Who feels that anger? Who witnesses that anger? We are triggered. When people can trigger you, they're going to turn you against yourself. Before I did this lecture, The day before and today, when I was meditating, I was seeing all of these pictures in my mind about situations that had happened to me in life. And I realized I've had so many situations of danger that I had almost forgotten about them because I normalized them. I normalized them because that's what I do as a black man. I'm supposed to be able to turn up and be strong. Okay? Black rage is internalized. It destroys our relationships. That sister's angry because of do. That brother's angry because of do. He couldn't get a job. He couldn't get this. He couldn't do that. Your anger will be used against you. Strategic calculation, planning, and practice are superior to anger. I'm going to show you a situation of anger that happened to me when I was about 19. I was in New York, Manhattan, running to 14th Street to meet a sister. And me dress up good, you know, because I knew a black police officer who told me about what he called the profile that police look at. So he told me that police have a profile of who they stop. That's not why I was dressed the way I was dressed this way, but I'm just telling you that I was dressed nice. Shoes, trouser, jacket, and it's hot, you know, and I'm running. I'm sliding across the pavement. I'm chilling, even though it's hot. So I run past a white male who is in a gray police uniform, which basically means he was a trainee police officer, right? I'm running past, being slick. The guy hits me in my back with his truncheon. Bang! In the back. He hits me. I stop because I was brought up over here. And when somebody hit me, I hit back. That's what I was taught. So I stop. My hands go out as we do, London style. And I went into the old Cockney bit, but I stopped and I looked at him. My face was screwed up. And I saw myself walk to the man. And then I said, he's got a gun and he's got a truncheon and he just hit you. That means he's going to lie, brother. So if you step forward, this could be your death. And I tell no lie. I saw my father's face in my head. I looked at the guy. He had blonde hair, blue eyes, short, probably about 5'6". And I stepped and I kept on going. That is trauma. That's trauma. And during my meditation, this came back to me, and all these different events that has happened where my life has been in danger because I'm a black man, standing at bus stops, having people throw shoes at me, black this, coon this, blah, blah, blah. Fighting to save myself and my friends. That's why when I had a group of friends, we were tight because it was us against the world. I'm telling you, people. So what I want you to understand is that all of these experiences create trauma. So what has happened then? There has been an insertion of toxins in youth culture. Our youth culture has become more toxic. And before you attack the young people, yeah, remember you departed from, if you were born in a Caribbean household in this country, you departed from what your family said. I came from a household nobody swore. I went to school and learned how to swear with the best of them. Then I learned how to swear in Jamaican that my parents didn't even do. You've got to understand what the young people are doing now is an extension of what we did when we thought we were hip, when we thought we were cool, when we thought we were rebellious. We were rebelling and falling into the trap. And I said, when I talk about rebelling, we had relationships with people that we shouldn't have had because there was no system. So take a minute to breathe and say sorry to your younger self. But say, me here now. We're here now to resurrect the African man and the African woman and to put us back on the square so that we can show the young people that we understand their pain. But we don't want to live in pain, people. We got to bring that joy. We got to bring that joy and that love into our family zone. You cannot be angry in your home and expect your children or your partner to accept it, because that's what racism did. The breakdown of the black family, the breakdown of our male-female relationships has shattered our families and produced a culture where too many men and women are at war. You're at war with each other. You see, you've seen the pictures of Chinese in Africa. You've seen the pictures of Caucasians in Africa, and you've seen them, not in all cases, but you've seen them belittle or attack or humiliate some Africans. Some, I said. So don't get it twisted, because it could happen over here as well. And you've seen the people passive. Them not do nothing. But you've also seen Africans, I've seen it, who, when another African does something, I've seen, and I'm not lying and I'm not trying to be funny, I have seen in Southern Africa 2 young boys and a man, a grown man, was trying to light them. They were trying to burn them. You see, what you got to understand, that this ruthlessness, that reptile, that mammal, comes out in relation to each other, because that's the way we've been programmed. Yes, racism has assisted in the breakdown, but our failure to teach the science of African relationships has led to too many fatherless and motherless homes. Now, I want to tell you something about fatherless and motherless. I heard somebody say the other day that in reference to plantations, and they said European fathers. So a man who rapes a black woman cannot be a father. That's not a father. A father has a moral and cultural meaning. A father is a nurturer. A father is a protector. Creating a baby does not make you a father. Having a baby does not make you a mother. One of the things that we got to stop doing is trying to say who's worse, the black man or the black woman. We're all out of alignment in some way, shape, or form. Unless you're perfect. I mean, I haven't met the perfect person yet. So the presence of a male or female does not equate to having either a father or mother. That's why when you see in the Assyrian conceptualization, you see Orset carrying the baby Heru on her lap. He's suckling at her breast. You see, the symbol for Orset is a throne. Now the child is sitting on the woman who's on a throne. There's so much symbolism in there. He's suckling at her breast, because that is femininity. And Osir is in a peaceful pose, feeling the oneness of self, feeling the oneness of family, understanding that it is the African man and the African woman that create family, who create the offspring. And at heart, a home, I don't care what you say, at heart, a home should be a peaceful place. We should be striving for peace in the African home, in the African family. The warrior does not exist in the home unless it is required by external forces coming in. The warrior does not carry a sword in his own house to be used on the family. And remember, there are African men and women who see themselves as warriors. That is just one aspect of who we are, and it is not the greatest point. So let's have a look. The denigration of masculinity. Oh, people, can I get through this? The street culture epidemic. Now, in my time, my parents never spoke street culture. And most of the I don't know any black family, and remember, when I was young, I was going to the homes of black families. Meaning, hear what I mean by that. Meaning a man and a woman and children. Where there'd be a table, you sit down to dinner, the man at one end, the mother at the other end. That was my introduction of black families. That's how I knew it. They didn't speak street culture, not around me. They didn't say clock this and clock that. Not in my house. And many of us have that experience. But now we have an epidemic of cursing. We love to curse. What is the meaning of the word curse? What is cursing? Cursing reveals the subconscious inner working of the mind and the current expression of masculinity or femininity in a culture. So hear these words: punk, sucker, P word. When I say the word, P word, F boy, N word, you're moist. All of these have a connotation that degrade the concept of manhood. If you really study them words, take them out of the slang vernacular and understand them, the terminology will show up in the interaction between young men and women. So in other words, if you are calling each other all of this as men to men, you're going to start saying the stuff around women. That's why in my day, a black woman was like a survival. Why? Because a decent black woman, you don't want to swear around her. You ain't going in her house if you can't talk correctly and don't respect her parents. That was a way in which you kept the community or the culture alive, because we had adults. We are lacking in adults now. Many parents are like they're picnic them. You're the same. You got the same hairstyle. You talk the same. You like the same music. Oh, you're not a parent. You're a friend. My child's my best friend. A child of mine can never be my friend like that. There's always a distance between a father and a mother. Friendly, kind, caring, but you will not find any African culture where friendship is the basis of parenting. Not one that's authentic. Who wants to be a man based on all of those statements that I've just looked at? Story number 2. The first time I was called an MF, I was working in this place. I was 17. And the man who said it to me was Turkish and he was about 30. I'm walking. He called me an MF. I heard it so fast. I turned around. I punched him in the stomach and told him, not my mother. Not my mother. Because I was taught growing up the sacredness of my mother. I was taught that by my brothers, my uncles, and everybody. Step to my mother, could never think about it. Now, you have our young people calling each other MF. See, we are justifying this cursing, but we're not realizing it is degrading our sense of who we are. The denigration of femininity. Femininity has been associated with weakness and in many unspoken ways to be avoided. So when a man calls another man a P word, or he calls a woman an itch, or he calls a woman a hoe, isn't he denigrating femininity? Because what he's kind of saying is you're soft. So femininity becomes something that should be dominated. Femininity becomes something that you don't respect. That's why you call another man a wussy. Excuse my language. That doesn't mean you respect women. It means you're disrespecting women. And that's why you're calling him that. Many of these words and terminologies come out of the prison industrial complex. I'm not telling a lie. So, the idea of violent domination has increased within the spectrum of youth culture, making it harder to be tender, loving, caring, to even speak of love. Oh my days. You know, when you have young people, you better know the culture. They had this thing called smash or pass. And they would line up, the young men and the young women would line up. They go up to somebody, look at their clothes, and they say, would you smash that person or would you pass? Smash means having intercourse. Look at the word smash. See, when you start looking at some of the words that we use in terms of intercourse, it tells you what's really going on. Why would you smash? And the women would say it too. So the man would say, I'd smash her. Yeah? The woman would say, I'd smash him. Doesn't smash mean to break up? Doesn't smash mean to put something into smithereens? You see, Francis Cress Welsing taught us how to decode language, but we've forgotten it. And that's why many conscious people are out there using the same words that other people use. And that easily can happen if we don't remind each other and reinforce each other of a better standard. It's not about being a perfect person, but it is about an understanding that the people around you should reinforce the best within you. That's why we need each other. I need a sister, Shanice. She needs me. Her friends need her. My friends need me, because you're going to remind me of who I'm supposed to be. It's not I don't want to be that, but sometimes you can forget. You get amnesia because you're around the wrong people. So what I'm trying to show you is we have to examine both our choices and our conduct. The one thing that every relationship has, the one thing that every relationship that you have had, I kind of spelled that slightly wrong, excuse me. So I'll tell you it. The one thing that every relationship that you have had has in common is you. You. So when you discuss relationships, do you start from the principle of what did I do? What am I attracting to me? What is my conduct? No, you don't do that. You go, and I'm a brother who sisters find it easy to speak to me. So I learn a lot. And a sister might say, he did this to me. But then if you say, then you now have a conversation, and then you might say, she might say something to me. Then I said, well, you said that to the brother? Yeah. See, you don't remember what you said or what you did. And it goes the same way for men. You've got to understand, people, that we all bring something into our relationship. Are you bringing God or Duppy? Many of us are bringing Duppies. We're bringing the darkness that has passed through our line from enslavement. The stories that grandmother told you, the stories your mother told you, the stories your father told you. The Duppy-itis. Duppy means ghost, or, for the non-Caribbean people, yeah? Or a spirit that take over thing and bad. So, this book, Black Mother Wound. And you know why I'm sharing this? Because I'm probably going to get told off tonight because I'm a man talking about this. Oh, he's just, he, I don't even know the words they use. What is it? I can't do the feminist words. I don't know what they are. But there's all these terminologies. Was it mansplaining? Whatever it is. Yeah. That are heaped on men who try to look at these situations, because really we need to look at these situations together. We need to get off YouTube and start having healing circles where number one is we start talking, then we start looking at other ways of healing. But my point is, if the black man is wounded, then so is the black woman. You are not here in perfection. We're mirrors to each other. My wound will affect Sister Shanice. Her wound will affect me. Her wound will affect the people around her. So we have to become aware of our wounds and seek to heal them. So the continued attacks against each other is consuming the mental, cultural, and environmental space that we need for healing. Stop fighting each other. No, sister. The black man is not the cause of all the problems that have assailed you since we've been in the Western Hemisphere. No, brother. The black woman is not the cause of all the problems that assail you in the Western hemisphere. She never brought you here. He never brought you here. Understand that. You know why we attack each other? Because we're easy targets. You don't mind attacking each other because you know that you think you can get away with it. You don't want to tell the truth to the powerful. Well, people say speaking truth to power. How many people want to do that? So until we can both discuss our wounds, that the social violence between us, until we can discuss our wounds, then the social violence between us will continue while your children tell you why they don't want to be in a relationship. So, in other words, the violence, social violence I'm talking about, the name calling of each other, the bad mouthing of each other, your children are watching that. And then the child will come and say, I don't want to be in a relationship. I don't like relationships. I don't like men. I don't like women. Because they have been exposed to the violence emanating from us. Violence is not just physical, people, it's psychic. The greatest amount of violence that was inflicted on us was psychic, and it was embedded in the culture. It is embedded in the culture. Even the word black is used as a psychic weapon against us in this culture. Whether you want to believe it or not, that's your business. Go and get an old English dictionary and see what black means. Everything bad. That's being conscious 101. We should all know that. So, sorry, people. Most conscious adults are sleeping. We don't know about the world of our children. You just assume that the good conversations you have at home, that is what it is. But that child, if you have a child who's a good child, they are being subjected to the same thing you were subjected to at school outside of your house. They leave your house as Jamila or Kofi and come back as Clyde and Cynthia because they don't like them names. I went into class, yeah, and they're calling me names. I don't want to be Kofi. I'm not Kofi, you know. I'm Clyde, not Clyde. I'm this, I'm that. See? What is happening here? We are not protecting our children because we're not honest about what's really happening to them. You understand? Don't put your hand on your head like that, Sister Shanice. You make me think we're doing something bad, right?
Not at all, but the time is just slipping away, and I wondered if you want to respond to some of the comments in the
Yeah.
chat, because
Let's
if you
go.
do,
Let's go.
I just thought, you might want to incorporate. What do you want me to do? Just put some on the screen or read some out to you?
You
Because
read a couple out to
wow,
me.
you've covered so much, yeah, in your presentation, and comments are coming in all the way. And I just want to also rise up our brother for the donation, our brother Norman Henderson. Thank you so much. Much appreciate love. We'll put that towards the brick in the school that King Maponga is going to be building. Anna has an interesting comment. She says, is it excuses or identifying the trauma as our greats have done and many to follow? But we could say, I think we start within the African home, with ourselves as the family is our foundation. Because I think earlier in the chat, someone was saying, when are we going to stop making excuses?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's
Would you
the
like to
thing.
comment on that?
Yeah, of course. If you think it's an excuse, then that's what you think. If you've studied history, if you have studied and you understand history, and you can say that over 1,000 years of enslavement is an excuse, then I'm not here to look. I should have said from the beginning, I'm not here to convince anybody. Any people can believe whatever they want. I know that when that policeman hit me in my back, that weren't no excuse. That was real. That was real. Where is the excuse? The historical evidence points to what I have said. But again, If you think that the solution is to ignore all this, then let's see. Time will tell. We all should be humble. I'm humble. I'm humble. I don't know everything. But to try to say that even if we take the history, and this is what I'll say to anybody. How many people have studied the history of the Caribbean? How many people have studied the history of America? How many people have studied the history of the continent? If you haven't studied those histories, then to think that you can comprehend why we're like this, to me, you need to rethink it. I don't see excuses by African people. What I see is an attempt for us to heal. But until you know, see, if you go to a psychiatrist, the first thing that that person's going to do is they're going to ask you, what's your history? Am I telling a lie? What's your history? You walk into that office, they want to know your history. Until you tell them your history, them can't help you. I'm not here to argue or prove anything to anyone. You believe whatever you want. That is not the role of me. I will provide some insights of mine. You take it or you leave it. That's it. There is no argument. I don't argue about stuff like that. We could have a debate, but I can't see where Africans are making excuses. I can't see the killing of Tyree Nichols by 5 so-called black men as an excuse. That is a direct There is a direct correlation between that killing and their imbibing of the self-hatred. Who are they killing? Aren't they killing a part of themselves that they despise? Because if they loved themselves and when they saw him, they would say, that's my brother, and you would safeguard him. Oftentimes, when black people are killing another black person, they are killing that part of them that they hate. That is why Amos Wilson wrote that book, Black on Black Violence in Service of White Supremacy or White Domination. So all I can say is we got to show and prove this history and this culture. But as far as I can see, in all of the history of the world, we are the only people to still produce greatness despite all of the bad things that have happened to us. We don't make excuses. We provide explanations, and from that explanation, we need to go on to healing. I'm in the healing zone. This is healing for me. I'm not just doing this for other people. This is healing for me. When I talk about the traumas and I'm meditating and the traumas come to my head, I'm going back to that point, but I'm going back to that point as an adult and having an understanding so I can remove the pain. The more pain I can remove from me, or the more pain that Sister Shanice can remove from her, then the better partner she will be. Because she will then learn to love herself and demonstrate that love to her partner. So that's my answer to that, my beloved people. I love my people, but I love me first. Because if I love me first, then I can become a positive agent within my community. Agent meaning as action. That's what I'm talking about. So yeah, man, me love me black people them. No matter what I said, I love that generation that came here because they made it happen. Now it's our job to move on from what they didn't understand, and we love them anyway. Love your mother, love your father,
Absolutely.
love them all because you know not what they experienced because they never had this knowledge. That may I say.
Mm. For real, for real. And, in your presentation, you spoke quite a bit of the trauma and the
Mm-hmm.
pain that is embedded in our DNA,
Mm-hmm.
and that, we relive. almost on a daily basis when we watch certain movies, etc.
Yes, ma'am.
And so Edwin, who is saying, where do we start? What's the starting point for this massive change that
Mm.
obviously needs to happen? Because you know that's coming from a place of trauma and
Yes.
a heavy burden.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to have the knowledge, but
Yeah,
what's the
man.
starting point? What advice? What are the first few steps that you think people need to be taking in
Okay.
order to shed off,
Okay.
some of that trauma?
Yes, ma'am. So one of the first things I say, one of the first things that I did when I became conscious was change my diet. Now, I'm not going to go into it. I'm going to give an answer designed to make people think. Change your diet. What diet? The food that you eat, the music that you consume, the conversations you have, and who you have them with. That's diet, isn't it? That's all food. That's food. So you got to change your relationship to food, black people. Diet. Change your diet. Me, I use meditation. That helps me to regulate my energy. So that when I come here tonight, yeah, I come with strength. I come with some laughter. And even though I'm talking about sensitive subjects, I'm not going to come off here raging. I'm not going to be shouting, because what is happening here is we are learning to deal with these issues. There's always a tipping point. Yes, we need to know history, but we can't go too far into negativity. If you go too far in negativity, it's going to have a more of a negative impact. You have to have the balance. That's why you can't always be super conscious. What I mean by that, sometimes you have to have a day off. Go walk, man. Go into go into the park, breathe some air, have some joy. Many of the reasons why our children or people's children don't follow in the footsteps of conscious people, because you're always switched on. You can't have a break for one day. All right, today it's a fun day, man. You see why I like coming on this show? Because we have a similar cultural understanding. I can laugh and I can do all of those things, but I'm still teaching. I'm still teaching. And this is teaching me. It's teaching me to have empathy, that when somebody asks me a question, I might not think that's a good question. But the point is, what's my response? You don't try and burn the person because they've got a different point of view. You don't try to burn them up. You say, okay, how do I answer that correctly? Let me show deference to my brother or sister. Let me show love. And I say to all of you who are listening, when people come on here, show love, whether you agree with them or not. Show love, because you don't know what that person had to go through to bring you that information.
Mhm.
It costs to go
Indeed.
into this.
And I can see from, some of the comments, that, some of our people have got real wounds out there. So that's good advice about changing the diet as well. And, think about who feeds you as well. Who's feeding
Yes,
you the
ma'am.
information that you're consuming that's making you feel the way you feel. And good advice there about, having some fun days and taking time
Yeah,
out.
man.
And you said you meditate, and as we was talking about meditation, I need to try meditation. To be
Uh-oh,
honest,
uh-oh, uh-oh,
I
uh-oh.
don't do. But as you were saying about meditation, I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking at the same time that is that a way of kind of elevating yourself above the problem? Because quite often, problems and situations and the trauma in our DNA can consume us. But we are spiritual beings, aren't we, having a human experience? And so maybe
Teacher.
what we don't practice and ought to be practicing is how to elevate ourselves above situations and taking ourselves away,
Mm-hmm.
from the situation that might be
Yeah,
burning us. And
yeah.
through meditation, through walking in the park, through laughter, is a way of actually doing that. And so if we put
Beautiful,
that into practice,
beautiful, beautiful.
spiritually elevating ourselves, above every situation. Wow, we could begin to start feeling the power you know, that we do have, and start experiencing, you know, that power and
Mm.
strength that you was just
Yes,
talking
ma'am.
about.
So,
Mm,
sister, look at what you just said. Yeah, remember I said to you there's four brains. The fourth
yeah.
brain, the frontal lobe, is the higher brain, higher consciousness. You know, people say
Mhm,
you can have an out of body experience. You see,
mhm,
I am not the physical vessel that you see. That is my person. That's not myself. That's not that which you call spirit. You
mhm,
hear it, but you don't see it. So
mhm,
when you have an issue, you need to transcend or ascend. So what you're doing is you take yourself into a higher form of consciousness in order to deal with a problem. You're always going to have problems. So
mhm,
what we now understand, if I sit there intellectualizing about slavery every day, I'm going to wound myself. But if I can bring a superior God consciousness to my study of enslavement, now I can see the keys or find the keys that we need to heal. We're looking for the keys to heal. We should be using history, psychology, politics, and culture as mechanisms to leverage power, healing, and to bring this world back into alignment. That's what we're doing, people. But if
mhm,
you see, everybody's got a frequency. If you walk down the road, sister, you have a particular frequency. So when you meet somebody, that's because your frequency's met. So the question is, what frequency are you sending out there? Because your experiences are based on the frequency that you put out. So if I'm showing love on here, even if I'm not really getting it back, which I am, by me doing that, I elevate my frequency. Elevation of frequency is what we need to understand. We are not merely physical. The physical body is the least of us. Your consciousness has been here from the beginning of time, and you are a representative of the Most High, or Netta, or Nebuchadnezzar. You come from the Most High, and what you are here to do is to remember where you came from and return there as an elevated point of consciousness where you merge into the oneness of God. Find the God within. That's what we're looking for.
mhm, mhm. Okay, thank you so much for that. And just want to rise up everybody in the chat for all your comments and contributions. Go Travel Abroad is made a comment to the conditioning that you were saying that happens in the workplace. You just need to see two black people come together and they avoid each other. You see
Right.
two Chinese come and work in the same space and they're going out, they're hanging out together,
Hanging
you
out.
know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we have been indoctrinated into, you know, when we see ourselves thinking, boo, you know, gotta run. There's a boogeyman. If I run far enough, I won't look like the boogeyman. It's too funny. Okay, yeah, we have had, 1500 years of trauma, haven't we,
Teach it.
as a
Teach it.
people? Yeah, and so we do have a long way to go. Let me just quickly swing down some of these comments and go to the other end and see what we've got going on here. Yeah, another comment from Go Travel here. This popped out at me that I really like. Self-knowledge plus self-love plus
That's right.
self-acceptance equals
Beautiful. Beautiful.
healing. Isn't
Beautiful.
that beautifully
You have to
put?
talk them thing there, so you know.
I must say that Go Travel Abroad is actually the author of the book that
That's right.
you referred to as
That's
well, The
right.
Black Woman's Wound.
That's
So
right.
rise up, Go Travel Abroad, tuning in all the way from Nicaragua. Absolutely brilliant, brilliant works, I must say. May I tell of my poppy experience? What's this going up? No, okay. So just swinging down, let's see what we've got here. Brother Kwame, let's have a read of your comment. It says, although we should have more self-positive images of our heroes and shearers such as Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, Kwame Nkrumah, Harriet Tubman, Amy
Yes,
Jack
yes, yes.
Garvey, etc.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. These are the images that should be hanging on the walls in our homes so that we can share the stories and tell the stories with our young people. What do you say,
Yes,
Dr.
beloved sister.
Kheftusa?
Let's look at the word art. Yeah. What was the art? What was the function of art in ancient Kemet and in African culture? The function of art was to stimulate the higher functioning of your brain. That's why when you
Mm,
look at the Netaru, the what people might call deities, you will see that they're done in a particular way and they stay that way because what they were actually doing was recognizing that art is stimulating your imagination and your creativity. That's why after, if you're an African person, you're supposed to have artwork that reflects who you are, that reminds you who you are. When you walk into a house and you see that artwork, it stimulates the African within you. You are the returning ancestor. So, for the ancestors to work with you, you have to bring those things that are familiar to them. That is why names are important. That is why symbols are important. Right? Remember that book, Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man? We were the people who started writing as symbols. So when the brother says we need to have these images, is 100% correct. Statues evoke power. That is why all over this country, you will go to major cities and there will be a statue of a particular person. People say, well, we don't worship ancestors. Well, we don't either. But what they do is they elevate ancestors by using statues. They remind you of people by using statues. They reflect their culture by using statues.
mhm,
So
mhm,
understand the power of images, people.
mm, mm. Yeah, absolutely. And, Kwame is agreeing it's like Sankofa to return to
Yes,
our original African principles
yes,
because
sir.
you talked about how our culture had been infiltrated, diluted, how far we've moved away from who we really are. We've adopted foreign principles, cultures, religions, and, we've lost the essence of who we are
That's right.
in all of that. And so we do need to Sankofa and go back prior to, the Arab invasion, prior to the European invasions, and to try and find back our identity that has been knocked out of us. So yes, Sankofa, agree, and I see you nodding and agreeing as well. What's Kings and Queens saying? Let's have a quick look at this one. It says, why was the marriage rate of our people higher when
Oh,
we came
beautiful.
from the Caribbean than it
Oh,
is now? Oh,
yes, man. You see, we have people there thinking. I'll tell you
mm,
why. Okay. The the end of enslavement in the Caribbean, two little steps away from the 19th century, right? I mean, 20th, 19th into the 20th, right? So what happens for our people is they still remembered that we weren't allowed to marry. They still remembered that we weren't allowed to have those relationships. So what happened in Jamaica and places like that, when enslavement was over, we reconnected. Marriage become a sanctified, sacred thing. Because we couldn't do it before like that. So in that older generation, they stayed together. Sometimes it them say, "Me not even like you," but you know how them say. But they stayed together, and
can I
you,
add? They
yeah,
often say they stay together for the sake of the children,
that's
because
right.
they recognize the importance of children growing up in two parent households.
Oh my,
The yin and the yang, the male, the female, the mother, the father. You know, they understood, from a
understood.
cultural perspective, the
Right,
importance of
right,
parenting
right.
those children.
Okay. So look at
And
what you
and so
just.
I just wanted
Go
to
ahead.
add to what you said there about they
Yes,
stay together.
yes,
Yes, and sometimes, and quite often, they said for the sake of the
of the
children. But
children,
we don't make that sacrifice.
because
You
we've
know,
got a
we're,
different
we're a
culture.
generation, yeah, we've adopted a different culture
Different
now where we
culture,
walk
beloved.
away from our responsibilities and give the responsibility over to agencies,
Uh
you know,
oh.
like
Uh oh.
children's homes and the
Uh oh.
like, to
Uh
do
oh.
the job that we're supposed to be doing, you know, walking away from our responsibilities. Is it too easy, you know, in the Western society for our people then to walk away from our responsibilities?
Right.
Mm.
There's so many aspects to what you just said, but let me do a very quick thing here for you, beloved. So remember, I said this ain't about love. In African culture, generally speaking, people didn't marry for love.
Mhm.
Marriage was a contract. What did I say? I said marriage was a contract that was designed to what? Produce strong families. So when they said they stayed together for their children, it wasn't based on love. People, oh, I've got the lovey-dovey feeling. You see somebody, you have flutter. After 20 years, you're not in a flutter like that. So what, so what are you gonna have? You're gonna have the responsibility to the woman, to the man, to the children. Because in our conceptualization, marriage was not a love thing. It was not a I will, as Amos Wilson said in a tape, I will climb the highest mountain. I will swim the deepest ocean for you, baby. That's not an African thing. It was find somebody that's gonna build a strong family so that we can build strong children. That was the rule. But what happened to our
That's the
parents?
rule of nature as well, isn't it? If
Exactly,
you, the rule
exactly,
of the animal kingdom.
exactly.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, what happened to our parents was that when they came here as children with their parents, they were acculturated into British society. So because of that, now we can leave. But also the issue is that racism, this is an excuses thing again, that racism put a wedge into our families' homes. There's a whole thing I haven't done. I've got a slide that tells you what I didn't talk about in this lecture. And one of the things was economics. One of the things is why black men don't like to talk about relationships to black women. Yeah, I just said it. Many men that I know do not talk to women, black women, about relationships because they feel as though it's going to be an argument. And it may be the same for the sisters. I don't know. Yeah. But the point that I'm making here is that we have got to learn at base level to communicate. But it ain't enough to communicate, right? It ain't enough to communicate. It's to have a different culture. If you have a culture where love, what you call love, which is generally, I don't want to say this, but it might be lust, it might be the feeling, that is not going to keep anyone together because it's going to fade. It is commitment. It's that contractual concept. The idea that you marry somebody who's going to uplift your own family. We marry to uplift the whole community. We've lost that concept. So there's so much that we don't understand. And mainly what it is, we are Eurocentric. Even if you're wearing your African clothes and talking Africa culturally, remember what I said about the reptilian brain falls back on something or hard to teach? We find it difficult to move away from Western culture.
And
We,
that's precisely what we've got to do. We are literally 2 minutes away from the top of
oh
the
my
hour.
gosh.
Yeah, it has absolutely flown by.
Woo!
You've just like packed so much in that presentation. So, you know, it was hard for me to pull you
I
away
understand,
because there
beloved.
was so much learning happening as
Yes,
well.
ma'am.
But this just leaves me time to thank you so much for gracing this platform again with your knowledge, the great advice that you have been given to our family here. It's been phenomenal. There's been so much, you know, that we have been able to soak up and absorb tonight. And you know, I think towards the end, what was just reminding us really, and that's the important role for us in the male-female and child relationship, and the importance of families, strong families, within the community, and the role that we have in building them as well. I'm so glad you're going to be coming back in the near future. Yes, family, he's going to be
Oh,
coming back. But next strong, just to let you know, we have a mathematician in the house, pi ratio, and he's going to be breaking down for us how we built the pyramids. I
oh,
mean,
uh-oh.
we don't realize how great we are as a people.
Mm-hmm.
The level of mathematics and
Mm-hmm.
scientific knowledge that you need to have of cosmology, of mathematics, of science, and everything else, all these mathematical formulas in order to build the pyramids and to align it with the cosmos. I mean, this session next strong will just give you a snippet of the height to which, well, we can't even imagine the great heights that we have fallen from, family, because we have fallen so low. We're fat and flat on our face. We are being taught by people who have never reached the heights that our ancestors
That's right.
reach and are never likely to. How can
Mm-hmm.
you be taught by inferior beings, people with inferior knowledge, people who don't have and have never reached the heights that your ancestors have? I mean, we were measuring the distance between Earth and the stars and the speed of light, and we were circumvent. Anyway, tune in next Wednesday, family, 8 p.m. We're going to be going in again, and he went in today. Dr. Kheftusa went in today, but you know what? Not to the point where we have to kick you off. Only to the point where we're saying you need to come back. You need to come back.
Yes, my sister.
So, to everyone in the audience, for all of your comments and contributions, thank you so much. Please do share the video today so that family and friends can actually absorb as well some of the wonderful presentation and information that has been presented to us today. I love the way you went back in order to come forward.
Yes, my
Absolutely
sister.
brilliant. Thank
Yes.
you again so much. To everyone in the audience, thank you. Please do tune in again. 8 p.m. GMT time, 3 p.m. EST time, 10 p.m. South Africa time for the Sister Shanice Show Live. More love, more strength, more voodoo power to all our family. Sister Shanice out of here for now. One love.